All right, let's pick up where we left off, Mr. Ohm. If you could continue with
Okay,
the
so Mr. Klein, you were discussing this backdoor that you found.
Yeah,
what did you do next in the proceeding?
So I looked at this SQL data program and started running some various commands against it to see if I could determine what it was that I was looking at here. What I also did was Agent Carroll had done ran the G-core command against every process on the system. And in effect, what that does is it takes a core dump snapshot of every process so that I can run a debugger against it to see what data was in it, maybe what strings were in it, what kind of program it was. So after running several different programs against both the core image and the SQL data, I discovered some interesting attributes about the program, and I'd like to move to Defense Exhibit 13, please. So I ran the strings command against the core file, and if you'll notice, one of the strings in there is rlogin, and what rlogin or rlogin-d, and what rlogin-d is, it's an old Berkeley command for a remote login daemon. So it actually allows a remote login client to connect to it to be able to establish remote access into the machine. In addition, I also ran the strings command and I looked for vol-d, which is the Solaris volume manager, and I found the vol-d string in the core image. I ran the same commands against SQL data, and as you can see, I found the same strings there.
So it appears, if I'm following, that this thing had two different names at two different times. Is that right?
Correct. So what you had, and I believe what we have here is you had a program called SQL data that most likely re-executed itself and changed argv0, which is the name of the program, and called itself vol-d when it re-executed itself, so that when Agent Carroll ran the PS command, this showed up as vol-d rather than SQL data.
Okay, and so you've talked a lot about how you found this. Could you determine at all what this program did? So
I wanted to run an experiment in my lab. I took another copy of the system and I booted it up on similar hardware that was run at the at CMO, and I waited till the 0 hour for the cron job to kick off. I verified that port 33003 was in operation, and I started trying to send data to the program to see how it would react. And what I discovered through my tests is that this was indeed an rlogin program, but whereas you would normally be required to authenticate with a user ID and a password, this would just allow me to connect through port 33003 and immediately establish a shell on the remote system.
So at the risk of insulting the judge, who has been 2 steps ahead of you the entire time, what did this tell you about what happened in this case?
So my expert opinion, I feel that somebody deliberately put this backdoor program on the machine and attempted to hide it and then later use it to gain remote access privileges no matter what the root password was.
And then more to the point, what are you prepared in your expert opinion to say about how this impacts the case against Brian Martin?
So in my opinion, this means that someone else could have gained privileged access to this machine.
So Your Honor, there's our proffer. And we believe that this is disclosed in the expert report, and we would like to testify in front of the jury.
All right, Mr. Bankston, do you have any questions? Would you like to probe a little bit factually?
No, Your Honor, I'd just like to renew my objection and point out this is obviously very complex evidence, yet we only received this morning. He says 24 hours, maybe that's when he dropped it in the overnight. But we only saw it this morning. We've had absolutely no time to prepare any kind of rebuttal for this witness.
But Your Honor, this is fundamentally critical to the entire case. If you look at the original expert report, page 9,233, there's a sentence that says, I looked for vulnerabilities on the machine. I think that's adequate disclosure for the proffer that you've just heard. And we supplemented it a little bit this morning, that's true.
All right, well, look, Mr. Bankston, do you have a response to that?
Your Honor, that one single sentence in no way gave us any indication about this testimony.
Yeah,
it didn't even reach any kind of conclusion.
That's my thoughts exactly. Let me ask you a little bit concerned about the probative value of this. I understand there was some voodoo here that was very impressive, but it sounds as though the bottom line is that you found a way into the machine to gain some sort of user-level permissions.
To actually gain administrative access.
Did your forensics analysis reveal that had ever actually been used?
No, Your Honor,
Okay.
there's no data.
And did your forensics analysis indicate who had put that back door there?
No, Your Honor, it did
All right,
not.
it could have been a system administrator, I suppose.
It's
All
very
right.
possible, sir.
I do see the value of this. I don't know that it's critical as you have stated, but I do see some value as a defense theory as to why you'd want to offer this. I also see that this is precisely the type of testimony that the pretrial discovery rule for expert testimony was intended to cover. So I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Bankston on precluding admission of this evidence, but given that this is a criminal case and that your client's liberty may be at stake, I am willing to consider perhaps delaying the trial so that the prosecution can have a chance to analyze the report and perhaps duplicate or attempt to duplicate the results. And in that way forgive the failure to disclose pursuant to
Your Honor, I just would strenuously ask that you reconsider. You're basically cutting us off at the knees. We've all prepared for this trial. We're all ready for the trial. The witnesses are arrayed. The inconvenience to us all would be astronomical. And by the way, I will remind you, my client's liberty is at stake here, Your Honor. We want to get this resolved as quickly as possible. So I ask you to reconsider and allow this testimony.
I will allow the testimony if we give the prosecution some time to be able to correct the error that was caused by the defense. And I think that's the only way we can proceed. So, counsel, I give you the choice. You may either proceed today and continue the trial without the evidence, or we can delay, and we'll find some time on my calendar to try the case again.
Your Honor, I just don't know what to do with that decision. I want at least the record to reflect we're very annoyed. And I think with the options you've given us, we're going to just have to proceed with this witness.
All right. Well, you've made your choice. I will say that the testimony, the opinions on this point will not be allowed. You shall not pursue that with this witness. If you have a lay witness that can testify to the same points that's not covered by the rule, we would, of course, allow that subject to the other rules of procedure here. But we'll now bring in the jury, and to the extent you have any questions. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And Your Honor, for clarification, the witness is still authenticated as an expert in network techniques and strategies, and we intend to ask a few questions in those lines.
All right. We will continue with the questioning, and Mr. Bankston, if you find that the testimony goes into areas that have not been adequately included in an expert report, timely submitted, I would rely on you for notifying the court on that. But now that the jury has stepped in, let me instruct the jury that the last question and answer that you heard, you shall disregard as though you never heard it, and it will not be considered in your deliberations. Mr. Ohm, if you would continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Klein, did you look at moral decency, this program that was discussed earlier?
Yes, it did.
What did you conclude about this program?
Well, it's my opinion that if Mr. Martin was looking to stop pornography coming through his network, again, I may not have exactly written the programs exactly as he did, but I don't want to second guess his capabilities as a programmer. I'd still say it would be a pretty standard technique to look at the traffic, look for pornography, and to isolate those particular messages for later review, whether it's for criminal referral or whether it's a policy violation internally.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Do you have any cross-examinations?
Yes, just a few questions, Your Honor. So you say it's fairly typical for systems administrators to engage in this kind of filtering?
Well, most likely for internal users, but not necessarily for guest users. I typically try to get my clients to at least put together a system monitoring policy that guests are allowed to see or should see and should accept that says your traffic's going to be monitored for content, and you consent to that in wanting to use this network.
And it's such notice and consent that's actually typical, correct?
Correct.
All right. And as far as filtering all the traffic on a network looking for files that contain particular colors, is that typical?
No, not really. I mean, because looking for colors, it's very difficult to be able to have the program distinguish a pornographic picture from a sand dune.
Have you ever seen a sysadmin run a filtering system of this nature?
No, I have not.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have.
Any redirect?
Just one question, Your Honor. Child porn, does anyone ever filter for child porn?
Absolutely, they're filtered for child porn, because even possession of a single image could be considered a federal offense.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions for this witness.
Any further questions, Mr. Bankston?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Rome? Do you have any, may I dismiss the witness?
Yes, you may.
All right, you're
Thank you, Your
excused.
Honor.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
Your Honor.
You have another witness, sir?
Yeah, I believe her name's Samantha Jones, but I'm blanking right now. Oh, good. Okay, I'll call Samantha Jones to the stand, Your Honor.
Ms. Jones, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Before God, yes.
Please have a seat.
Good evening, Ms. Jones. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Not bad. Could you please state your name, title, and job responsibilities for the record?
My name is Samantha Jones. I'm the CISO of the Center for Coalition for Moral Order, and I've been with them for 10 years. I have certifications in security of MIS, ISS, and IPPI.
Okay, very well. And what are your job responsibilities as the CISO?
My responsibilities are to make sure that our systems are secure, that our IT infrastructure is secure, and that we have a decent network that reflects the values of our executives.
So could you elaborate on that? What do you mean decent network and the values?
We want to make sure that nothing appears on our network that will create a hostile work environment, and based on our ethical principles, that includes pornography, indecency, harassing material, any kinds of, sexually explicit information.
So aside from having this as your goal, do you relay this to the employees at the company?
We certainly do. We have an acceptable use policy that details all of the methods that we expect from our users, all of the compliance issues.
And could you turn to tab 16 in the binder in front of you? Do you recognize this document?
Yes?
It has something to do with what we were just talking about. What is this document?
This is our acceptable use policy, or a redacted section of our acceptable
Okay,
use
could you read
policy.
the bullet point to the jury that we've highlighted on the screen, please? Oh, Your Honor, I would move the
Is there any
Exhibit 16.
objection to the witness
No,
reading
no,
this
no.
exhibit, sir?
No, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I'll have to go out and see it.
Feel free to leave the witness stand.
Okay. Thank you. Users are strictly forbidden to download or store any form of pornography. CMO monitors the network to ensure all data stored is appropriate for our family values reputation. Any activities that may put CMO's reputation at risk will result in immediate dismissal.
Please do.
So we've talked about your policies. What steps have you taken to achieve these goals, aside from writing the policy?
We also hired a systems administrator that was informed of our value code. We had previously interviewed another administrator, a Mr. Space Rogue, but found that he didn't have the moral character that we were looking for.
I see. Okay. And who is your systems administrator?
Our systems administrator is Brian Martin, and we communicated our goals by showing him our acceptable use policy and in the interview process and in our new hire letter.
Okay, and again, if you could turn to tab 3.1415. Do you recognize this?
Yes, this is a copy of our new hire letter to Mr. Martin.
And Your Honor, I would like to move this exhibit into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
I believe you've marked this as Exhibit 17.
Okay, my document just says X. Okay, Ms. Jones, what is this? Could you read this to the, jury? Yeah.
May I
Make,
approach?
Your Honor, leave
Please do.
for the witness to approach the screen.
Dear Brian, the Coalition for Moral Order is pleased